Welcome back to another rezero video. Arc 7 Chapter 3 has just been released. I highly recommend you check out my summary for Arc 7 Chapter 2. Anyways, let's get into the video. The chapter starts with a flashback with Subaru and Ram doing tasks. We find out that Ram has essentially given Subaru most of the tasks to do, and Ram is slacking off per usual. We see Rem and Ram critique Subaru's cleaning skills on a shelf, and it isn't going well, so they're giving him advice. Rem makes a large list on things that Subaru needs to fix, and Subaru is unsure if he'll be able to remember all of the things he needs to improve on. Rem goes on to further explain that she tries to think in Subaru's shoes, and in combination with her experience, it allows her to see all of the flaws he's making. This was just one of the many scenes at the Roswell Manor. The scene switches back to Subaru after he got hit by a tree branch. It turns out that he got hit on his shoulder blades. Subaru scrambled and reclaimed his knife and placed it in its sheath. Subaru stated that he saw that sort of trap before in a manga, so he was surprised that it actually did work. Subaru makes his way into the forest and chases Rem. An hour passes, and using the advice from the masked man, Subaru is able to pick up Rem's trail. Subaru is sure that the distance has been reduced. However, due to Rem's caution, Subaru has been getting destroyed. We found out that Subaru has been caught in around 10 traps or so, and so far he's currently damaged. We see that Rem is disguising her footsteps and constantly laying traps, so Subaru has to move cautiously. Subaru pulls out his guilty whip and lashes at the grassy floor. All of a sudden, 3 tree branches fly out, hitting the air. We see that Subaru just disarmed the trap. Not only that, these traps would have broken Subaru's arms if it hit him. We also see that Rem's traps are trying to break Subaru's legs or arms to incapacitate him. We find out that as Subaru progressed in the forest, the traps are getting better. Rem is literally becoming a master trap maker on the run, and Subaru can't help but compliment Rem's skill. Subaru then sees what he's looking for: scratch marks or ripped bark from the base of a nearby tree. We find out that despite Rem trying to help Lewis is actually the reason why Subaru can chase Rem, since Lewis isn't really cooperating with Rem due to her mental state. Subaru thinks Lewis had nothing to do with Rem's name and memory being lost, but her sin shouldn't be reduced. She is still to blame. Even if Subaru met Rem, he had no concessions he would make to Lewis. Subaru thought about Rem's state, thinking that if his friends were present, they could have all supported Rem. However, Subaru was alone, and it seems like fate has prepared a harsh situation for Subaru. Subaru clenches his teeth. That's enough whining for now, he says to himself. Subaru thinks to himself he needs to catch up to Rem before Rem realizes that Lewis is leaving behind a trail, or else she would stop Lewis from doing that. Subaru would need to somehow catch up fast, or somehow get ahead of Rem. Subaru compares his skills to Rem's, realizing he is lacking, and comes to the conclusion that Rem is setting these traps because she knows Subaru is chasing. Otherwise, she would just leave a few traps at the entrance of the forest and then stop. The reason for this is due to Rem being able to smell the scent chasing them. Subaru smells himself, but only smells sand and sweat. However, Subaru realizes he must be emitting quite the odor for Rem to smell him. Subaru pressed on, disarming traps and following the clues left by Lewis, which was bark being stripped off of a tree. However, the tree that Subaru saw had such a large amount of bark stripped off that Rem would have noticed it. This means that it was a trap. Subaru threw a clump of grass in that direction, and all of a sudden, where it landed, a hole opened, swallowing trees. If Subaru was caught up in that, he would have been buried alive. As Subaru thought about this, he noticed someone, Rem, jumping at him. Rem states that Subaru is persistent, as Subaru is knocked to the floor. Rem states that she wouldn't have done anything if he gave up. Rem states that the scent has grown stronger, even more than it was when they were at the meadow. Of course, this was because Subaru has recently returned by death. Subaru raises his hands, stating that he is not hostile. He explains that regardless of his smell, he is not an enemy. Subaru talks about his bad first impression and his scent, and states he wants to start over. Subaru goes on to explain that he's sorry for not taking into account Rem's emotions. for essentially bulldozering her feelings and not explaining anything. Subaru realizes he needs to appeal to Rem to win her over, essentially talk no jutsu. Subaru says that he cares about Rem and wants another chance. Rem, however, still had anger in her voice. She clarifies that regardless of dissent, she wouldn't have judged Subaru solely based on that. Subaru tried to abandon Louis, a small girl. That is indicative of Subaru's true personality. So it wasn't Subaru's scent that caused Rem to become hostile, it was Subaru's own actions and nothing more. Subaru thought about how he would proceed, to tell Rem the truth, to make an excuse, or to explain that Louis was evil. However, deep down, he realized that he couldn't change Rem's distrusting gaze, no matter what he chose. Subaru was silent, and Rem questioned why he wasn't saying anything. Rem turned away, and then Subaru dived at Rem, since something was approaching. Subaru and Rem fell to the ground, and just where Rem was standing, a tree got blown away. Subaru managed to avoid the shot and saved Rem from this attack, which seemed familiar. The chapter ends there. So it seems from the chapter that Subaru has saved Rem's life and the hunter is back in action. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen. I'd like to thank my channel members, starting with Zayalid, Blue Portal, OMW, and Nutrex.